All right, let's get started. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Jennifer. Welcome to the fourth season of the Poets Building Bridges. I'm from the Walt Whitman Birthplace, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this celebration of poetry and connection. A big thank you to George for making this series possible. We host many more events, and if you'd like to stay in the know, there's an email sign up in the chat. And again, you'll also find a donation link. Any type of support is truly appreciated, and I hope everyone enjoys the readings. I'll be passing this on to George.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. Welcome. I think this is the second year that you're doing the engineering work, and all of the shows that you've engineered for us have turned out very well. So thank you very much. I, as the originator of the Poets Building Bridges series, um, the first year of which we went from place to place to place, and it was kind of like we had to create the we had to build the whole thing from scratch, month by month. Um, Now that we are, hosted by the Walt Whitman Birthplace, they got their licks down, so it's working very well. And I thank the Walt Whitman Birthplace for all the good work they do, and for poetry and all its different capacities, including support of the Poets Building Bridges series. So this is series 4. It's our first of 10, I think, shows that we're going to be doing over the course of 2024. And it's my honor to be able to bring together 3 groups of poets, triangulated together, sharing a work with each other, learning from each other, and expressing yourselves. We have a group from New York City, as we do in most cases, from downtown. We have a group from New England. I hesitate to say whether it's Massachusetts or Maine because it's Rockport, and Rockport is also New Hampshire, I think, in a way. So, I mean, we'll find out a little bit more about that. A group from Rockport and a group from Naoussa, Greece, which is in the north of Greece and the north of Thessaloniki, beautiful mountain town, which you're going to hear about and hear from the poets that are associated with that group during the show. So this 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 series uh, is one which did not originate with me. It originated with some work I was doing with some English poets and some poets from India, and they put together this triangulation. I recognize that if it's more than just a random group of people that happen to be asked to a particular show, there's the possibility of networking and building community to community. So that's the concept behind this series. So um, it's worked so far, and we've been very happy to be able to get encouragement and participation from really all over the globe so far. We've been to many different continents, and a lot more to look forward to. To start, I'm going to introduce Linda Kleinbub from Pink Trees, a downtown New York City group, um, who does many different sorts of programming, an up and coming group in New York, and stretches beyond New York City, of course. We recently did something together in Erie, not in Erie, but it's somewhere in Pennsylvania.
Easton Book Festival.
Easton Book Festival. So she's extended the reach and the activities of Pink Trees Press very nicely. Please welcome Linda Kleinbub.
Buddy, and thank you, George, and thank you to the Walt Whitman Birthplace and to Robert Savino for having us here today. And thank you, everybody, for coming from all over the world to be a part of this. We're really thrilled. Today, I'm Linda Kleinbub. I am the editor of Pink Trees Press. And today we have Madeleine Artenberg and Phillip with us, and they are 2 of our authors. Madeleine will read first, and then Phillip will read, and then I'll wrap it up, and I'll be reading from my newest book. Just to give you a little background, I wanted to share with some of the books we have. This is the Silver Tongue Devil Anthology. This was the very first book that we put out in 2020. It came out during the pandemic. And since then, we've published 8 books. We average about 2 books a year. This was the second book. It's very light. It's called Poems from an Unending Pandemic by Phillip. And then we put out Madeleine Artenberg's book, Dysfunction, a play on words in the familiar. And she is a brick poet champion, and she loves language. And then we put out Philip's memoir, which you'll be reading from also, Good Boy, Bad Boy, A Better Man. And then we put out Madeleine Artenberg's book, which was Naming a Hurricane, and she'll be going to treat you to that book today. And then we put out Ron Combs' The Bookstore book, which this is his memoir of working 50 years in New York City bookstores. And then we put out Jane LaCroix's Spell Book of Ordinary Mistakes. And the newest book and the 8th book in the series is my own book, and it's called Appear to Dance. And I put my book out on my press as an experiment to see if I could have any more power than the press that put out my first book in terms of publicizing it and getting it out into the world. And that's why I published my own book on the press, but it's the 8th book. So just to begin, I'm going to put the bios in the chat as we read, and I'll put the links to our website. And I'll give you Madeleine Artenberg, and she'll be reading from Naming a Hurricane.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I lived in Athens for a year, so I'm very happy that we're paired with poets from Greece. A reading from Naming a Hurricane, published by Pink Trees Press. Thanks, Linda Kleinbub. This is Babel, epigraph. Yiddish was developed from Old High German in the 9th century. The Cambridge Encyclopedia, 2nd edition. Mach schnell, my boyfriend says in his best German general tone, nudges me to hurry, make our train. Not that Mach schnell, not those trains. More like my grandfather calling me to steaming matzo ball soup, his thick glasses fogged, yarmulke askew. Soup of misshapen dumplings, rough-hewn carrots, brothers accusing brothers born from the same broth, needs a pinch of this or too much of that. Bless those who do not live starched to the white page. American in Cuba. At the Museo Bellas Artes Havana, preschoolers tell me their families bring them here often. Everywhere, girls and women like strutting bouquets in hand-sewn cotton dresses, boys and men, heads under hoods of 50s American cars, breathing deep the smells of Miami. I stroll near the hotel, arm myself with "No me moleste" and "Policía, ayúdame, por favor." A dark-skinned young man approaches, speaks little English. I understand him to say, need your help, don't want your money, give you my pesos for dollars, good things only in dollar stores. Please, pretty lady. He shows me his ration coupons, hardly enough, begs me to help him. I am considering his request when La Policia swoop out, slam him into a wall, ask for his papers, my passport, and whether he's bothering me. No problema, I say, but they drag him off. He calls out, I just wanted to talk to you. I learned several years ago my father was born in Ukraine and he escaped in a hay wagon. This is from nothing. Thank you, Father, for 6 months of silence after I broke curfew. I begged and begged you by paper, airplane, and alphabet soup to talk to me. When you finally spoke, it was breakfast choices, math equations. There were whispers of your long ago escape in a hay wagon, the hasty voyage to Ellis Island for an 8-to-a-bed life on Hester Street. I wanted to hear more, but you didn't talk about the forced rifle curfews, breaking of glass in Proskurov, a sister's legs gang smashed, history on which to hang the 6-sided yellow star you gave me for graduation. I inherited your flat feet. Thank you, Father. They led me to fields of rustling quills and emptied sky on which to write. Ruse of the Flute. On the afternoon ride to my uncle's, I can't stop giggling at Mother's jab that his hairpiece looks like a slab of chopped liver. Stop laughing like a hyena, she says. After the trip home, I practice flute to Mahler's number 9. The first sweet notes calm me until pounding almost unhinges the door. 5'1" mother curses me in Yiddish English, eyes spinning, teeth bared in a two-fisted drive to send me back to unborn. Her face the same as earlier on our afternoon visit when she passed the den, caught me on my uncle's lap. She didn't catch my attempts to move away, or his increasing pressure on my wrist, or the vice around my waist skewering me onto the terror underneath growing. The Blind Man and Poet. He'd never seen a woman. Sight is one color in her palette. The way she says his name sounds like seersucker, terry cloth, old blues. They question what is green. Verde, ver. It's cucumber, she says. Envy's green, he says. He removes her fine silk blouse. She closes her eyes. When he slides fingers down her silky arm, each inch announces itself. He traces the rest of her outline, hangs it on his mind. Their breathing's bumpy now, they empty, smell like cucumbers, like new beginnings. How's my time? Good? Okay. Imagine your finger as scalpel. What do you see in the mirror? Merely shapes or every blemish and flaw? How you look to definers? What would you do if your finger were a scalpel? Growing up, I held Archie's, Betty, and Veronica next to the mirror. They were Venus. I was Pluto. I'd stare at my face throughout the day, redesigning, dreamt of incisions, especially to my nose. Bullies, bullies everywhere, in the family, in the street, in school, screaming at me, ugly, ugly. Thicket of bangs met black cat's eye glasses above my frozen, unsmile. When I stuck a toe in the dating pool, boys had me at the first caress of my face. So beautiful, they'd say. Never believed it, knew they used those words to score. Nowadays, my high school and college photos surprise me. I hereby affirm I'm beautiful, inside and out. I hereby affirm I'm ugly, inside and out. I've put down my finger. Now please put down yours. Last one. Rhinestones and Memories, which is the last one in my book, Naming a Hurricane. I gave you away to Reminiscence, my favorite store in Soho, long out of business. Now I see you in a new secondhand shop, half hidden under a pile of other rhinestone purses. Hello, old friend. Remember how we'd bounce from kiss to caress at Studio 54? I'd wear those bright purple elephant bell hip huggers. They always did the trick. By 4 a.m., you'd be stuffed with numbers. I still wear bright colors. I see your once flaming fuchsia suede has worn to barely pink. Both of us are scored with lines, but hold spirit enough. I take you in my arms, unclasp you. Oh, strumpet, inside your glories, unfaded and ripe. Unfolded, I too still flush, awakening the rose. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Madeleine Artenberg. And now I give you Phillip Giambri.
Thank you, George and Linda. I'm going to begin with some pandemic poems. Grimm's Fairy Tale 2020. 4 months into it, sitting on the couch in your underwear and bathrobe, unwashed for 5 days now, watching the world fall apart on TV, belching, farting, and picking at that new pimple on your cheek. Wondering what the fuck happened to romance, dancing close to soft music, making out in a dark doorway, feeling like your heart was going to burst with joy, smoking a doobie, watching a blazing sunset on a pier. Life was so full of possibilities. We were going to change the world. We were all going to be one. You remember that? Yeah. I think that was another life. Maybe it never even happened. Artists under siege. I am no longer. I'm disappeared. Somehow vanished in a pandemic wilderness of chaos and opposition. I'm no longer a poet. Words have failed me. Truth no longer exists. I'm no longer an artist. Vision obscured by bodies in freezer trucks. I'm no longer a dancer. Movement obstructed by brown shirt troops and marching moms. I'm no longer an actor. My stage now an ER, littered with unnamed, broken, and dying. I'm no longer a musician. My soft, mellow notes replaced by the screech of sirens in the night. I'm no longer a singer. My voice overtaken by the wail of families for the lost and gone. All that remains of me is one sound, a single note, an ohm of peace, lost in the chaos of dying dreams and opposition anger. In dreams, I dance. After a year in pandemic confinement, I stare blankly in a mirror looking for the me that was. The previous me now forever gone, lost in a vortex of unimagined death charts. What character remains in that morning mirror? Fragments of a sad youth reimagined? Remnants of lovers enjoyed and gone? Pieces of a body broken by my life choices? No. Bits of a life bitten and chewed well. Memories of booze and drugs overdone and exploited. Joys of live music heights never again to be, now in this arthritic body agony. Reflections of an old writer seeking words to define a past that remains unexplainable and unrecoverable, except in memories of those still here who mouth the words but can no longer dance the dance. Yet in dreams I dance. Brothers. We call each other late at night when we've had too much to drink, talking shit about what we're doing, but really just needing to reconnect. We're the only ones know that shit we did. We're the only ones remember that shit we did. We were there and did that shit, and it still burns. That time's gone now for everyone else. We were never there. We never did it. They don't know or care anything about it no more, but we do. We remember that shit. It haunts our nights. We call brothers to talk shit, bound forever in dark memories. The loss of joy. I think it was the middle of March 2020 when joy as we knew it died. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was around that time. After this past year of horror, joy seems now an abstract, something hard to grasp, unreachable to most. Soon we'll be mostly vaxxed up and no longer wearing masks, going about trying to jumpstart our lives. But the horror will remain, imprinted in the brain and heart like the memory of 9/11, but worse, a lot worse. We can't shake the memory of loved ones who passed alone without a handheld, who laid in wait in freezer trucks on a city list for our funeral time. We won't be able to read the names every year on March 15th of all those who died alone and uncomforted. Their numbers are too great. Those strong of spirit may overcome the loss and the hurt, someday again find joy in life, but it ain't coming easy. Joy's going to be hard to regain. I mean, really hard to regain after all we've seen these past years. Hopefully, the return of music and poetry and art and nature might help. I'm going to read a few vignettes from my memoir, Good Boy, Bad Boy, Better Man. Our street, our house. On Kamak Street in the 1940s, gas street lamps are lit at dusk by city lamplighters who carry wooden ladders on their rounds, lighting each lamp on their route. City street sweepers clean our streets with large brooms, followed by metal trash cans mounted on wheels and pushed by men who shovel into the cans manure, garbage, and trash left by service horses, wagons, merchants, hucksters, and careless neighbors. In South Philadelphia, Kamak Street between 12th and 13th is very narrow with tiny row houses. Most have 2 or 3 front steps made of white marble. Every Saturday morning, the ladies of Kamak Street clean the marble front steps with scrubbing brushes and Ajax powdered cleanser. It's a Philadelphia tradition. Our house on Kamak Street has a coal heater and minimal hot water. A large unheated kitchen with a room above it was added to the house before we moved in, and both are always cold in winter. Italian All-Stars. Most of the baseball and boxing stars in the late 40s and 50s are Italian Americans. Our mostly Sicilian immigrant community loves them, supports them, listens to games and boxing matches on the radio, and watches them on TV whenever possible. My grandparents have the only TV in our neighborhood, a 12-inch Philco. Neighbors gather outside their parlor window on Friday nights to watch the Gillette Friday night fights live on television. On the corner of Kamak Street, the next block, is the Passyunk Gym. Every Saturday afternoon, my dad takes me to watch the boxing champions who come to the gym to train for upcoming fights in Philly. I meet Rocky Marciano, Rocky Graziano, Joey Giardella, Joey Giambra, and many other notable Italian boxers from that era. Expected to die at any time from tuberculosis, my dad vicariously lives his dream life in sports through the many Italian-American sports stars, especially boxers. Autumn, Dago red and scooters. In autumn, there are no falling leaves on Kamak Street. There aren't any trees. The sidewalks and curbs are lined and stacked high with cases of crushed grapes, the remnants of extensive home winemaking. My family buys homemade wine for our dinners from our neighbors for 25 cents a gallon. They also provide the wine for masses at St. Nicholas Church, free of charge. Our pastor, Father Fabrizi, loves Kamak Street wine, enjoys lots of it before, during, and after masses. More important to me, fall is also scooter season in South Philly. Each boy makes his own. I decorate mine with soda bottle caps nailed all over the front and sides. It's a snazzy ride, I gotta tell you. The fall air of Kamak Street may lack the crisp smell of fallen leaves, but it's filled with the bittersweet aroma of fermented grapes and the whoosh, whoosh, whooshing of boys on scooters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phillip Giambri. And now I will be reading from my book, Appear to Dance. This too is a pandemic poetry book, and I believe that pandemic writing will be the new genre for kids to study in school one day. This first poem is called The Fifth. I find solace next to a radio, playing a tune I know by heart. My horoscope predicts fear in an unknown future, loss of home, humanity. Radio songs sing me my troubles, caress me with melody. It's cold and rainy. The businessman announces, it's the 5th week on Zoom. Soon people will begin to crack. Let's incorporate a virtual happy hour. Join in with the drink of your choice. Food for thought. First time to Northside Bakery since lockdown began 6 weeks ago. Outside, customers line up 4 to 6 feet apart. I wait behind a Polish-speaking family. Mom, dad, teen and grade school daughters wear black latex gloves and surgical masks. The teen starts coughing. I begin to worry. Is it worth dying for a good loaf of bread? This is a birthday poem for a friend who lives in California. Ian's birthday haikus. Celebration plans. Send gifts without leaving home. Mailbox surprises. Zoom birthday party. Virtual festivities. Internet laughter. Far though I see you, grateful for years of friendship. Happy birthday, girl. Digital birthday. Celebrate with me online. Too far to taste cake. This is called Dance, Scream, Breathe. It has a little quote. I am the Lorax, I speak for the trees. I'm still learning. I seek wisdom from trees. I climb to the top shady corner of the Little League bleachers. I am leaf level. Hide away in the park. Breeze reminds me of other things. FaceTime friends' plans begin to emerge. Good to see you in person again, even on a tiny screen. We're still in isolation. Loneliness grows in dried grass on empty playfields. Making plans to travel during a pandemic requires a good cancellation policy should the virus spike. Research what attractions are still closed. There's always the waterfront, open-air distractions of a park, trying to break the humdrum dailies. I climbed to the top of the Little League bleachers to be oak leaf level, silent in their story whispering secrets of longevity. Stay planted, rooted in your space. Don't try to stop the wind. Let your body sway. Dance, green, breathe. This is called The Artist's Birthday, and it's for Linda Wilkin. And Linda Wilkin is the artist that did this cover and 5 other covers for Pink Trees Press. She studied art for 10 years, and we're really grateful that she made some of our books so beautiful. The Artist's Birthday for Linda Wilkin. Division Street, Chinatown. Picnic umbrellas provide shade for a circle of friends, clinking glasses for the birthday girl. Outdoor diners wearing masks, shifting folding chairs to avoid the sun. A thunderstorm rolls in, blasting wind, driving rain sideways, claps of thunder, bright lightning. Scuttling party guests venture into the bar-turned-general store. The barkeep ushers the group to the stay-dry back room, against all social distancing rules. They gather together, eat caramel cake, sing birthday songs, while keeping a few feet apart. Wearing a mask except for sipping and eating. The drinks flowed. Alcohol was sure to kill the germs. Friends gathering for the first time in 4 months, trying to act normal, celebrating a birthday in quarantine. It's Christmas Eve. It's been a challenging year. Tension was brewing on the kitchen counter. After another debacle, I lost it. I screamed and stomped my feet. Behavior of yesterday's days. Darkest time on earth. The wall between us has grown. Neil Young's Harvest Moon reminds me, I'm still in love with you. I want to see you dance again. Fairy Tale Princess. COVID crisis sends my friend to the hospital. A phone call in distress. They want to put her on a respirator. My symptoms, lingering fatigue, needing afternoon naps, congestion, loss of taste and smell. March begins today, approaching 1 year of solitary confinement. Rapunzel locked away in my tower, peering out the upstairs window. I see you in the yard below. My tower is built of infectious disease. Trapped, I dare not let my hair down. Please know that I miss you, isolated in my loneliness, petals in the wind. Constellations appear to dance. 1 month living with coronavirus. Am I healed? Prescription bottles are empty. Follow up next week. Clear head, lungs hopefully too. Smoke lifts like clouds rising into the starry midnight blue sky. Half moon floating in outer space. Constellations appear to dance. My nose is cold. I'll bathe in warm lavender, crawl in bed beside you, wrap my body around you, our universe. Here's a little haiku just because it's Saturday afternoon and we're on Zoom. It's called Saturday Afternoon. Cat walks through keyboard, interferes with Zoom call. Dinner time is near. And my last poems are 2 acrostic poems, and they're the last 2 poems in the book. And the first one spells the word sleep. Silence the jitterbug. Let yourself rest. Evening's herbal tea entices you to dream. Put yourself in bed. COVID virus. Children, what will you observe? What will you remember? Valuable lessons are not identified in classrooms. Designate responsibility. Virus kills humans, cleans earth. Inside every torment is a reason to survive. Understand, I don't have answers, but I'll share all my knowledge for a cure. Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you, Linda Kleinbub. And your guests today, Phillip and Madeleine Artenberg, both of you. Very fine show. We now turn our attention to our friends from Greece, Xanthi, Hondrou-Hill, and her friends from Naoussa. Madeleine mentioned living in Athens, and like other regions of the world, we think of the capital city or a main part of the city as being the vortex for that culture. Athens or New York or Boston, up north. But in all these cases, I mean, there are functional, rich communities of poets in sub-regions or other regions which we don't know so much about. So this is one opportunity to find out about poets in Greece who are not from Mykonos or Patmos or one of the Dodecanese or from Athens, but from the north of Greece in Thessaloniki, which is a very different region of the country. Um, and the principal organizer of events in that area, Xanthi Hondrou-Hill, is with us today. She's going to present some people that we've seen. Actually, Robert Whalen and I have seen at the Naoussa Poetry Festival, and we'll be seeing here for the first time, many of you here in America. So please welcome Xanthi Hondrou-Hill.
It is such a huge honor to be here with you tonight, George, and at the Walt Whitman Foundation Birthplace Association. Thank you very much for inviting us. Thank you for coming to our festival and experiencing it from close up. You probably wonder how I speak so good English. I'm married to an English-Irish citizen who lives in Berlin. So it's my connection to English. But I studied at the University of Stuttgart. I started studying German and Anglistic, Americanistic, but I thought I'm not good enough. So I switched to linguistics. So I have a master's degree in that and also journalism and public relations management. And I worked at some point at the Stuttgart at the General Greek Consulate in Stuttgart, doing public relations there, and also teaching Greek, English, and German in diverse places, amongst them the University of Stuttgart. So very happy to be here with 3 poets from the International Poetry Festival of Naoussa, and I will introduce to you Chloe Koutsoubeli, who is a winner of the National Poetry Award, Andreas Karakokkinos, who is from Cyprus but lives in Thessaloniki, and who has the biggest library of poetry of Greek poets, which is outside of a library. And Dimitris Kraniotis, who is a doctor, first and foremost from Larissa, and is a wonderful poet and great supporter of the Poetry Festival of Naoussa. So we will start with Chloe Koutsoubeli. Chloe Koutsoubeli is born in Thessaloniki in 1962. She studied law at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and has published 11 poetry collections, 3 novels and 2 plays. So very versatile. Her collection, I Omotrapezi of Another Land,
Those who sit in the same table.
Yes, okay, very good. Was published in Gavrili, this publication in 2016, and this was awarded by the State Poetry Prize in 2017. Her play Orpheus in the Bar was performed in 2014 at the Agora Theatre in Patras. In 2020, a collection of ancient themed poems titled Always Knowing What the Antigone Stars When She Leaves was published by Fotovendro, publishing house in Seville, translated in Spanish by Jose Antonio Moreno Jurado. And in 2020, a study of her work was published by Rome publication titled The Poetry of the Ancient Myth in the Work of Chloe Koutsoubeli by the philologist and poet Angeliki Mavroudi, and recently a volume of scientific studies of her work was published in the Literary Club of Thessaloniki in Graphema Publications titled Naked Body. She has also been awarded by the Naoussa Poetry Festival, and what prize here means is basically that your poems will be translated in any of the 3 very good languages that I speak. So Chloe speaks English, so her poems will be translated into German now. Chloe, please read your 3 poems.
Thank you very much for inviting me here, Xanthi. It is an honor for me to be here with all of you, and I hope that we build bridges in this way. Today is Women's Day, so I dedicate these 3 poems of mine to women all over the world. The first poem ever written. In the beginning, a long time ago, the goddess created. She said, I want, and the world's egg hatched. She said, I'm afraid, and darkness was torn by noise. She said, who am I? And the first woman arose from the earth, covered in dirt from head to toe. She stretched her limbs in the light, the wind caressed her breasts. She felt desire. She sketched an embryo word on the ground. It had not yet separated itself from the placenta. It stirred like a crawling lizard. Then it emerged trembling, every syllable a blazing cosmogony. And with this word, in the wilderness of the first world, Eve called her beloved, who was made by the depths of Erebus and the living entrails of the sea. From that day on, in hope of incarnating the need, mortals' habit to write poems prevailed. And now I will read 2 poems about Penelope, which I hope you know that she was the patient wife of Ulysses. She waited for him for 10 years until he came back from the war in Troy. Penelope, she knows by now. It's not the foolish sirens who sing pretending to create art. Not the old Circe with her last hidden in windbags forever sealed, nor the misbehaving Nafsika trapped in a wrong age in white socks and childish dress, neither the Lestrygonians nor the lotus that keep him away from her, not Poseidon's petty anger or the mix-ups with his old comrades. Penelope knows by now. Her last message will remain unanswered. They'll never talk to each other again. Reason compels him to stay away from her. Everywhere around her, her suitors drink raki. They wallow in the arena, male lions full of lust, define their space with their arrows. And Ulysses? Penelope doesn't even remember him anymore. She only knows that she slept with a stranger one night, and when she asked his name, "I'm nobody," he replied. And Penelope too? "I waited for ages without a body, just a soul, like smoke from the fireplace. Only in my needlework did I find comfort. Of course, I had the suitors." Excuse me. I'm sorry, I don't have the rest of the poem. It must have stuck in. Sorry. So never mind. I will tell you what it says in my words. It says that Penelope had an affair with a servant, and this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to her that she had this affair. The only thing she regrets is that history never mentioned this. And presented her like a patient wife who was very submitted to Ulysses. I'm sorry, I don't have the rest of the poem. It must have stuck in my machine as I typed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you very much. So our next guest tonight is Andreas Karakokkinos. He's from Cyprus and lives in Thessaloniki. He studied law at the University of Thessaloniki and has published 4 poetry collections, and he is a member of the Greek Association of Writers in Thessaloniki and the Union of Writers in Cyprus. Andreas, can you please unmute? Andrea, μπορείς να ανοίξεις το μικρόφωνο? Now we will see. He practiced yesterday with his daughter to switch on the mic, so we will see if he can manage.
Αριστερά κάτω, πες να πατήσει.
Αριστερά κάτω το μικρόφωνο. On the left corner, if you touch.
Do you listen now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for this invitation. The first poet is Typhine. Typhoons in their season approach trace, snag roofs, flood the shores, raise waves like mountains, sink ships. Typhoon in our time approve foundations, snag tomorrow, flood huts with blood, raise barbed wise, sink in cousin souls. The second one is with the words of poets. Wrapped in your crimson soul, you travel on the bow of poetry, with red verses in your cheeks and your gaze nailed on words. The readings, a gentle ripple of voices, carry you with the words of poets, and in the tranquility of the evening reflects a fainting smile on your lips. And the last one is the old tablecloth. I returned without displayed memories. Everything was still there, an open wound waiting tightly to be sprinkled with drops and chamomile tears. Everything in the same place of bitterness, and on the table laid out that old tablecloth with the red scripts, always waiting for me for one last farewell dinner. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dimitris P. Kraniotis is from Larissa. He's an award-winning poet as well as a doctor. He has published 11 poetry books in Greece and abroad, and he edited and published the anthology in English World Poetry 2011, where 205 poets from 65 countries contributed. His poems have been translated into 36 languages and published in several countries around the world. He has also participated as guest poet in several international poetry festivals, and he has been awarded with the international prizes for poetry. He has been named several times as an academician in Italy and a doctor of literature. He's the chairman of Writers for Peace Committee of PEN, Greece, president of the World Poets Society, and member of the Hellenic Literary Society and the National Society of Greek Literary Writers. In 2022, he received the Gold Award Aristotle, first prize, and I translated his poems from the first International Poetry Festival in Naoussa. Dimitris, please read your poems.
Thank you for the invitation for this great poetry event. I will read 3 poems. The first has the title In a Flash. In a flash, you violated the borders which buried their know thyself. You destroyed prisons behind curtains, turned ablaze by the spark of your anchor. Without cries, without whispers, in a flash, that symbol it was, you gave birth to light. When you embraced that isn't told, although written in darkness. The second poem has the title Moving. We are naked now. We don't the colors, addressed words and voices. We are blind now. We drank the light, swam in death. With alcohol and tobacco in our language, we testified falsely, forgetting who we are. We built our life on a bird and we flew again. Simply, we moved. The next poem has the title, Our Heart's Visitors. A strange talk with a stony garment, threateningly hovers in our every step. Cold drops of courtesy burn our breath. Did hope cease to visit our heart? The snow today isn't white, it is colorless, like the iris of our eyes, like good morning, which doesn't come out of our lips. Did love cease to visit our heart? A torn poster in the whirl of the wind, our every word. Blue pebbles sunk in the blue of the sea, our dreams. Did poetry cease to visit our heart? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. George, how are we in time? Do I have time to read mine?
You have ample time. As a matter of fact, if Chloe finds the rest of her Penelope poem, she probably has time to do that as well. So yes, you have plenty of time.
Wonderful. Okay, so I would like to read you my poem Mediterranean Waves to give you a little bit of taste of my homeland or the way I experienced it. Mediterranean Waves. Three blue poets fill our life. One singing the blue from the sky, the other the waves of the sea, and the third whispers the wisdom of the wind. No matter to which shores the poem takes us, to which clouds we want to travel, with the wave of a blue scarf, the white sail of a boat, or the wing of a plane, there is always the wisdom of the wind to carry us. To reach the shores of dreams, with flowers, pebbles, and seashells as treasures, the nights where we talked at blue tables with friends, or on the phone miles away, listening to the tide at full moon. The fun we shared, traveling in a rental car without lights on an island, looking to avoid a monastery and ending up spending the day there in the arms of a saint, bringing with us healing oils and sacred water. The paintings we discovered in the small museum, in our faces and on the street corners looking down to the sea, feeding a foreign, hungry artist at the little coffee shop by the seaside. We didn't exchange letters and alphabets like our ancestors, didn't care if the numbers were Arabic or Greek, didn't even try to find common ground, because three blue poets, a painter and a musician, filled our lives with the Mediterranean waves. So that's one. And the other one I would very much like to read. It's like a hymn to the poem, to the poet itself. It's called Poetic Habitat. Poetic Habitat. The poets live in their poems. They're born in them. They grow up there. In the spaces, they are raised by the words. In these spaces, they breathe. They are resting on the punctuation. And even when they leave, they exist in the white of every piece of paper, at the edge of every pencil, and in the infinite possibilities of expression in every language of the world. Thank you very much for having us. It's a pleasure.
I have found my poem, if I may read it.
Yes, please do, Chloe.
Hold.
Oh, Chloe's going to
Okay.
read her second
It
Penelope.
was just under the table. Okay, I found it. It's Penelope, but it's Penelope 2. I waited for ages without a body, just a soul, like smoke from the fireplace. Only in my needlework did I find comfort. Of course, I had the suitors, but I was bored to death with their blatant jokes. Telemachus was a relief, although he too was searching for his father. One night I slept with one of the servants. His body was like warm bread, dipped in wine and honey. It didn't matter that it happened. What matters is that history completely ignored it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you, Xanthi. I got to get the Xanthi, the X part of it in the beginning. Dimitris and Andreas.
Yes.
Right. Thank you all for your contribution today. Really wonderful. From different parts, he's Andreas from Cyprus originally. Dimitris is from sort of the midsection around, Larissa is around Volos, middle part.
Yes.
Chloe, I think you're from the north, from the Thessaloniki.
Thessaloniki.
Yeah, so we have an interesting mix of Greek poets with us today. Before turning to the last group, I want to give a little shout out to the audience members who are here today, some of whom are affiliated with the Walt Whitman Birthplace. Richard Bronson is here, former poet laureate of Suffolk County. Bruce Johnson, also an important contributor to the Walt Whitman Birthplace at this point. A number of people from Suffolk County, as far out as Chip Williford and Riverhead, He's going to be one of the presenters later on this year, one of the compares. All the way through Nassau County, a number of Nassau County people here, into Brooklyn and right into Manhattan itself. So we have and one person, I think, from Oklahoma. Oklahoma, shout out to Oklahoma for coming to see us today. It's a nice group of people that we have. Now, turning to our third group, I'll say again, that this cosmos of communities of poets is myriad. It's really incredible. I was in Boston. I know a little bit about Lowell, going to the Lowell Celebrates Kerouac group, and from time to time, I think I did something in the Cape around Beverly, Massachusetts, but north of Boston, between Boston and New Hampshire and Maine. There's a term for it, Northern Mass, I think it's called. Bob can tell us, but there's another group, another coherent, cohesive group of writers, poets, meeting in various locations in Rockport and Lynn, Mass, and a number of locations. And they have one major festival that Bob is involved in putting together, at least one, the Rockport Poetry Festival, and many activities. So we're going to hear we're going to shine a light or put a lens on that region of New England, north of Boston now, with Bob Whalen and his cohorts. Please welcome Bob Whalen.
Thank you very much, George. It's good to see you and Dimitris and Xanthi and all my new friends here today. We live up on Cape Ann, which is north of Gloucester, and the other Cape in Massachusetts that's famous is Cape Cod. I just want to note we were named after a queen. They're named after a fish. Consequently, there's really only one Rockport. I just want to get that clear. And you're right, this is an area of poets, Eliot, Olson, Lowell, a bunch. Anne Bradstreet was the first published poet, a woman, by the way, for Women's Day, outside of Britain in English. So I'll give up on the long, tall tales, and I'm going to be introducing three prominent poets from the area, Martha Fox, Sue Ellen Wedmore, and Carol Seichek, and they're going to read from their work. I'll let them hopefully show their book or books and discuss title and publisher. We'll start with Martha. She's from Rockport, has taught young writers for decades, publishing some poems along the way. She works with the Cape Ann poets. Her book is The Art of Assurances, but I'll let her tell you more about that. Martha, if you would please.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I will do a show and tell, several shows and tell. This is a book that was published in 2022 by Grayson Books, which is a New England publisher. And I'm very grateful to have been invited today by Bob, and special thanks to George and the Walt Whitman Birthplace for building this bridge of poetry for us to cross together today, and for bringing me back to rereading and reconsidering Whitman. It's been, he's a required poet for college students, university students here, and it's been a long time since I really delved back into Whitman, so I'm grateful for that. And I'm also glad that today has given me the nudge to think about the commonalities between those who are represented today. That's an important perspective to have. As you know, I live in Rockport, which is on the east coast of the Atlantic, and Rockport is a seaside town that's surrounded also by forests and fields. And here, like in other places in the US, we are keenly aware of the effect of climate change on our lives. I imagine that all of you share that concern. Recently, recent couple of years, we've suffered from a lack of rain. And in fact, today we have a wildfire alert for this area. I have been wondering how Whitman would respond to climate change in his work. This poem, which I wrote last summer, is called Drought Days. Laconic clouds stalled all August long. Still optimistic on her knees in the soil, she dismisses a wariness among the weeds. Windless, soundless sparrows hide in drooping pear boughs, sensing. Her sweat leaches into her work. 2. A woman walking brown woods breaks the backs of maple twigs. Puffs of dust feather her bare ankles like tawny tufts of a molting owl. Her fingers stroke an oak leaf, parchment, where this season wrote its too early conclusion. So she reads the trail she hikes, and brook and pond gape empty-eyed when she scans the unwell land. 3. In the sear pasture, monarch eggs fry on milkweed, bees faint on bolting mint, root fires smolder. With the absence of waters and their ancient airs, silence of sediment, tracks zigzag in riverbeds stamped by dinosaurs. Wind lifts silt, erases. 4. Predicted rains come to nothing. Patchy drizzle sizzles on crisp grass. Closing open hands, people pack into sparse shade, while the sun drums on and on in the chest of the sky. I recently had a chance to pick up a first edition of Whitman's Leaves of Grass, and it had an introduction by Malcolm Cowley, who's a literary editor. In his introduction, Cowley writes, Whitman finds infinite wonders in the smallest and most insignificant thing. He wanders among familiar objects and finds that each of them has become a miracle. So this next poem connects with that notion. It's called A Common Stone. And as I wrote it, I contemplated, here's my show and tell, this stone of granite from my yard. I've spent a lot of time with that stone. The epigraph is from an American poet named Robert Francis. What may a common stone reveal? Something not stone, not seen, yet real. So I found in this stone layers of stories that it might hold. Fire at the mouth of the cave flares in the eyes of a dire wolf. Fight in the mother's pulse, savior in her palm. Grinding into the waves, a glacier calves, translucent as mica moons, new icebergs keen in the teeming sea. A weathered flint napper flutes an arrowhead, her lithic skill sharper than starlight, shards of feldspar under her nails. In deep time, sacred takes shape. Verbless and voiceless while wind abrades and rain rounds, while seasons loop and mountains peak and sink, in an eye blink, old growth falls. Clearing a bed for annuals, a gardener stops. She leans in close, beholding a common stone. This is suddenly understood by an ordinary woman. Not alive is not the same as dead. Well, as we all know, I think Whitman used his writing to engage in social activism. And the last poem I'm going to read, I wrote shortly after the US presidential election when, like a number of my people in my spheres, I retreated from news and social media. And in the poem is actually sparked when I learned the word refugia, which many of you might know, but it was new to me until rather recently. Refugia, an area where organisms can survive during unfavorable conditions. It's called In the Meantime, November 2025. Most days I reside in refugia, must sheets, sheet music for piano adagio, bars where drinking is the love story. Worst days, I burrow into mangroves, lenticels, between gills and scales of mushroom caps and salmon I curl up. I nap in the archives of mosses, witnesses of glaciation. Together with microbes in fractures of ancient magma, I'm possessed of the long view. Do not mistake absence for apathy. In the smolder of hate fires, I incubate my basest nature. Later, I'll be ready as a landmine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martha. We go now to Sue Ellen Wedmore off the coast of Rockport, I believe on the East Coast, the only place on the East Coast and possibly in the country, there are two lighthouses on the same island, the Twin Lights. And Sue Ellen volunteers over there with, I believe it's the Audubon Society, making sure that it is handled with care. She's the author of a book, one of her books, A Fixed White Light. And it's inspired by the wife of the lighthouse keeper there who took care of the lighthouse through a fierce blizzard in 1864. Whitman wrote about the Civil War, and so she would like to share some poems that speak about the daring and courage of that time. So, Sue Ellen, would you please?
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Chloe, who mentioned it was Women's Day, because I became so obsessed with these lighthouse keeper women that for years I wrote poems about them. So my book is A Fixed White Light, and it's written in the voices of 6 women lighthouse keepers, all in the 1800s, most of them about through the time when Walt Whitman was writing. And I was inspired at first by the wife of the lighthouse keeper on Thatcher Island, where we do volunteer under the Thatcher Island Association. And her name was Maria Bray. And here I have show and tell. This is Maria, a photo from the Cape Ann Museum. And there's 2 towers. They're both 156 steps each. And I've done those steps, although I don't do them now. I've done them in the past. And I just became so inspired about her climbing those steps in the storm for almost 4 days, twice every 4 hours. So what happened was that the lighthouse keeper, the assistant lighthouse keeper, became ill, and her husband, Alexander, took the assistant lighthouse keeper to the shore to get medical help. And she was left alone with a young nephew, but we're not sure. He was maybe 12 or 14 years old, to keep these lights burning every 4 hours for 3 or 4 days. So it was right before Christmas that this happened. And this is the first poem that I wrote in Maria's voice. The Lighthouse Keeper's Wife. A bitter storm had set in, and there was Maria Bray, alone on Thatcher Island with her teenage nephew. My husband stranded on the snow-blind shore. I tramp through sleet-charged days, shriek-sliced nights, climb 156 steps to feed an insatiable child. This one whimpering for right whale oil. The sea heaps with foam, the northeast gale white-crested as the storm that flung the shipwrecked Thatcher children like gulls' eggs against this island's granite face. I do not eat. What use is food? My world is oil and wick, scouring the sooted lantern panes. I'll not sleep until I hear above the surf Alexander's easy hello, until I touch his face with my cracked and frost-shaped hands. And so that was the heroism in that storm. Her husband did get back on New Year's Eve, on Christmas Eve, and kind of found her asleep. But if you can imagine doing that every 4 hours, climbing those steps and lighting it. But they were heroes also on a day-to-day basis, because the responsibility for keeping the light and the lens and keeping the island there were paths that you could walk on, was theirs all the time. And this is a poem I wrote about a job that would have been very difficult, but they did it every day, both Maria and her husband. And if you can see this, this is the lens that was on the lighthouses, both on the north and south light. It's called a Fresnel lens, and you can see the man on it. You can see how large it is. One of them is still here. It's at the Cape Ann Museum. But it looks like a giant beehive out of glass, but you could walk into it and you could clean it from the outside, but it had to be cleaned. Or if it was cleaned, it was efficient. If it wasn't cleaned, it wasn't efficient. And she polished it. So this is Maria's voice as she polishes. A little explanation to start with. In 1864, the twin lights of Thatcher Island were fitted with lenses developed by Frenchman Augustin Fresnel, which have been called the invention that saved a million ships. Because with this light, they could see 20 miles at sea. And Maria Bray would have assisted her husband in polishing these beautiful lenses. I dress against the wind, struggled toward the tower to climb from island to sky. How many were lost before Monsieur Fresnel sharpened light, tilted it toward the horizon. The metal floor rings as my boot heel strikes a rainbow. Light, splintered by the lens's prism into indigo, red, green, and gold. Chamois in hand, I stretch toward the lens, a shimmering glass beehive, taller than a man, melange of diamond and stars. swirl away the night soot. How does the lens work? A visitor once asked. Imagine slicing a magnifying glass into 100 concentric rings, each one thinner than the last, so that it fragments and refocuses the flame. Or imagine feathered light squeezed by great hands into a single beam and hurtled toward the horizon. It's quite a beautiful thing. You can come to the museum sometime and see it. My third poem is about another woman lighthouse keeper, Ida Lewis, little show and tell, who is the keeper of Lime Rock Light. And I'm writing about her, especially for you poets, because she has a connection to Emily Dickinson, of all people, another Yankee writer, because she was so heroic that she was celebrated in Newport on the 4th of July. They called it Ida Lewis Day, for her bravery and her dedication. And the speaker was Thomas Wentworth Higginson, who those of you know Dickinson know that he was her mentor. And after her death, he was the one that really was instrumental in getting her poems published. So this is in Ida Lewis's voice. My first rescue, 1869. That September day, I spied the pitching catboat, heard their laughter, 4 boys about my age, hooting, wrestling, sons of Newport's finest, judging by the boat, sleek and shiny, hug 'em snug. One boy shimmied up the mast until top heavy, the boat plunged into the sea, took on water until the hull, frigid and so small only 2 could grasp it, rolled toward sky. When the others, treading water, screamed, "Help, my God, help, my God, help!" I jumped into my skiff, rowed hand across the surf until beside them stabilized my boat and drew them like Pa had taught me, one by one across the stern, hold them back to our island, to fireplace, blankets, and Mama's molasses toddies. Straw-haired Samuel, when he opened his eyes, gushed, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And yet, on the mainland, it would be 20 years before he admitted it was a keeper's daughter who had saved his privileged life. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Those are terrific. Another thing about the coastline here is that they're mentioned in Eliot's poems. The Dry Salvages is about the seacoast here, as well as when he mentions 3 Turks' heads. He summered here. Our next poet is Carol Seichik. She comes to poetry from a long career in visual arts. She's published in various journals and anthologies, and she's also a visual arts curator in the Boston area. She'll stick with the Odessa theme because her latest book, which hopefully she'll show you and mention, is about her family immigrating from Odessa. So, Carol, please.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, everyone for coming together at this reading. It's delightful to hear all the different voices. This is my book. It's called The Distance from Odessa. My grandparents were born in Ukraine, which is in the news. When I wrote this book, it was not in the news, and it's certainly in the news today. So, but we're also celebrating, at least here, we New Englanders are celebrating Walt Whitman 200th year. I think he actually died around 200 years ago, exactly. And I thought I'd do something a little different, just, so Whitman, of course, has written many, many, many poems. And I thought I would just read one stanza from one of his poems called As I Ebbed with the Ocean of Life, and then talk about or read about my grandfather's journey from Ukraine to Philadelphia. So this is Whitman right here. And it's just a stanza of a long poem. As I wend to the shores I know not, as I list to the dirge, the voices of men and women wrecked, as I inhale the impalpable breezes that set in upon me, as the ocean so mysterious rolls toward me closer and closer, I too but signify at the utmost a little washed up drift, a few sands and dead leaves to gather and merge myself as part of the sands and drift. So that was Whitman. And the first poem I will read is called A Conversation, The Grandfather I Never Knew. And it's written in 3 parts. And I will pause after the first part and after the second part. But the first part is written in my grandfather's voice. The second part is written in my voice in response to his voice. And the third part is written by the poet, me. The grandfather I never knew. I will leave Kiev on a clear night when the moon guides my way along the Dnieper River. Mist-filled bulrushes lining the way. In the darkness, I'll avoid highway gangs and border guards looking for the likes of me trying to leave the country. But grums are smoldering and attacks on Jews are imminent. I am fearful that I will be caught and sent back. I'll pack a small suitcase as satchel and dollars. The railways will transport me through Europe. You can't imagine how many want to leave. Once in Liverpool, I hear that we stay in overcrowded lodging houses. It could take weeks before we are able to board. How so much could go wrong, where it begins, where it ends, what is left behind. I was never told the stories of life in 1894 Kiev, the year he left, never to look back. At 18, my Yiddish-speaking grandfather journeyed across the sea in a steamship newly designed for a 10-day journey, packed with others seeking refuge. Perhaps he was placed in steerage along with other youth. As one of 7 siblings, did he travel alone? Arriving in Philadelphia, he apprentices to a tailor with skills perhaps acquired in Kiev, an artisan center for fashions of the day. Year after year, I see a photograph of you, Wolf, on the wall of the company that bears your name, and I search for the immigrant transplanted. I cherish the one story that I am told, that each morning before work, you would stroll through the park by your house. I can picture you, eager for success, and I think of freedom, its power. Today, the wind blows, it's spring and cool. I took my walk this morning along a wooded path, ferns and mosses in rebirth, and I am reminded of you and new beginnings and the dream, what it has to offer, what it takes. Thank you. My second poem is called Different Lives. And this book is actually dedicated to generations of women, my grandparents that all immigrated, and then my different lives of the women who immigrated, and then my daughter who immigrated out. Different lives. You would think that nothing changes. Angles of the houses, varied rooftops that jut out in different directions. A crop of houses surrounds in the usual seashore cramped space. Beyond my backyard, beyond the braided wood fence draped with vine and tangle, the woman in the house is sick from rounds of radiation. Her husband tells us she has been limp on the sofa for days. Every day is different, he says. And across the newly trimmed privet hedge, our neighbors, 2 young children deep, are selling their house. It's the next chapter, they say, though I think they haven't been here long enough. The sanctuary of just being so difficult to hold on to. Is it vision or the lack of that brings so much change that time fools us in this way? The morning air evaporates into new light, conjures no promise of what ends up in the coffer. What's done or undone when the wind motions over tall grasses. I listen to the hum, the moon still visible as though forgotten or reluctant to leave, lingering as we do in this confusion of life, in its constant revision. And my last poem, Martha and Sue Ellen and Bob and I were all member of a poetry group. And each time we meet, there's one poet that gives an assignment for the next time, which you can do or not. And Bob always has very interesting assignments. And one assignment that he's given a few times is to write a poem called A Haibun. And so this poem is a haibun, and it's called The Path. Coyote scat, owl pellets of bones and claws. Here, where the railroad once cut through, a surround of meadow, thick with the pungent scent of fall, scent of wilt and goldenrod. It's yellow, yellow, embroiled in the drama of this grassy field. And beyond a cathedral of vines, snarled a broad sweep to the heavens. No mercy in nature's own takeover. You would think our earth different from humans' errant ways. As in this meadow where a hawk glides, the feeling so sinister above a solitary tree, bare, shorn of its outer bark, its identity long gone. You could feel lonely here, feel lives porous, powerless, but the rapture of the solitary has its own luster. I turn to watch the goldfinch rise and dip under a giant oak. A rim of solitude, layers of lives, our porous selves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. I have a couple of poems. I'll try to be quick. As has been mentioned, I do run the Rockport Poetry Festival. It's now the International Poetry Festival. This year, it's going to be mostly on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, the 23rd to the 27th. So I expect all of you to get on a train, a boat, or a plane and get over here. It was founded because of something that's been like an elephant in the room here, at least in the chat, because an individual got elected to be president, and I got physically ill, and I was trying to figure out, it was something I recognized, and then I felt the same as I did when I was about 16 when JFK was shot. And I realized that something bad, from my point of view, happened. And then I thought, if I protest the way I did then, I'll die. I'm just not going to be able to keep up that level of energy. So I thought, what can one do to develop an environment where such things have a hard time happening? He's the symptom, not the problem. And it occurred to me that getting together like we are now, speaking up, and discussing the beautiful are things that will create the environment, a garden where great things can grow. And I want to thank George for putting all this together, because this is precisely what I hope continues to happen. I'm a poet laureate of Rockport, and sometimes it's a poet's laureate job to say things to a group that makes sure you'll never come back again. And this is one of those times, though not this particular poem, which will be both a connection to Odessa and Haibun, which is a prose poem followed by a haiku. And this is called Cold Mountain Refugees. You cannot walk over them as if they are a filthy mat to roll up and shake away their will like dried blood. They have freely chosen to bask in a field of sunflowers under the blue of a boundless sky. They have decided to ignore your contorted red tongues, pleading twisted supplications, attempting to convince them that straight ruled lines are more important than winding pathways through woodlands or the random markings in marble. You insist that shards are jewels and charred iron, bent, is gold. Your help is no good for anything except to leave craters in the earth, plumes of putrid smoke, and holes and crumbling walls where only weeds can grow. Darkness without sleep. Flakes whirling in squalls of ash, a blanket of bombs. The next one is a bit more formal in that I do like to, and the Haibun is a form, but this one is a quatrain with rhyming, and it is now, actually, the other day it landed on the moon. It went with the lunar codex and was sent up to the moon to be part of a digital database there. And you'll hear an echo of Whitman at the end of the second verse. It's called, Can a Bridge Be Built? Can a bridge be built joining heart with mind? So compassion is seen as logical, where passion won't render reason blind, and thoughts inspire the emotional. Can a bridge be built between body and soul, where molecules sway to transcendent music as they dance to make existence whole, and muscle enlightens the body electric? Can a bridge be built that brings hate to love, where opposites learn to tolerate? As acceptance expands through the sky above and dark impulses mitigate, can a bridge be built to bring life to stone? Its spark, the zenith of creation, animating skin and bone to endure beyond annihilation. Can a bridge be built to span the flow of time, conceding its course and all its power, flowing from sources so sublime, where eternities drift in every hour? Can a bridge be built across the gorge of death to pass that height, but know no fear, without clinging to the final breath, and say farewell to all that's dear? And now I'll do a little shameless self. Well, actually, for the four of us, I want you to see this book. It is called Tide Lines, and it's Cape Ann Poets. And I have another formal verse in this that is a villanelle, and it is about relationships. It's called Glacial Pace. The softest lands evolve at glacial pace. Rough mountains are ground slowly into hills, but tender valleys flow with light and grace. Ravines and canyons flaunt their open space. Wild rivers carve, refusing to stand still. The softest lands evolve at glacial pace. White rapids rise and beg the chase. White summits echo challenges and thrills, but tender valleys flow with light and grace. Storms rage and etch the rock face into lace. Velocity is a tool of nature's skill. The softest lands evolve at glacial pace. Seas surge, obliterate, and leave no trace. Whole continents submerge beneath their will. But tender valleys flow with light and grace. Both fast and slow emerge and interface. Sometimes creation's speed is what fulfills, but tender valleys flow with light and grace. The softest lands evolve at glacial pace. And family's important to me. And I'll end with a poem written for my youngest daughter. I think she was around the age of 14 or 15. And it's called As She Wraps My Wound. I was slicing an onion for supper. And here's the incident. The white globe covered with dry, crinkled skin can beckon tears as I slice it for dinner. The blade slips. It rotates in my grasp. Instead, I am the one who is cut. Red weeps from my fingertip. My youngest daughter, the last child still living with me, having heard my curse, responds with a Band-Aid. He is 1/5 my age, yet insists on caring for me, proclaiming to know better than I about tending small things. I'm so much further along on this path we both now share that I worry I will meet the destination too soon, afraid she will not be prepared enough to complete the journey alone. As she wraps my wound, I feel better. Thank you. George, the ball's in your court.
1 hour, 47 minutes. Beautifully done. Timely work, every one of you. Thank you all for your contribution and your cooperation and getting your time in and getting us to hear your poems. Even if it took the Penelope poem 2 times to hear it, was well worth it. So I think we had a lot of fun. Once again, it was a pleasure to host the Rockport Poets, the Pink Press Poets, and the Naoussa Poets today for the opening of season 4 of Poets Building Bridges. Next month in April, look forward to Jennifer Janot and her group from New York City, to Chip Williford and his group from Riverhead, and oh dear, the third group. I'm going to get stuck here. Swedish poets. Oh, the Swedish poets, led by Peter Nyberg Malung, who all of us that were at Naoussa back in October will recall, the Swedish poet Peter Malung, and he's going to be bringing some people along to join with us in the April session. Should be a good time. Once again, I want to thank everybody who joined us, including those of you who came from other locations or are not participating today. Your participation in the chat room and just in general is really heartwarming for me. So thank you for joining us. I'll now turn it over to the Walt Whitman Birthplace and Jennifer. Any last thoughts? Otherwise, we'll sign off and we'll chat a little bit after the recording session is over. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone. Everyone's work was really great. And thank you for joining us today.